there's 3 members off with the driver and all. They're just put in mode, taking them into custody here.
All right, so we're back after a couple of year hiatus with the Code podcast. For those of you that haven't tuned in before, my name is Rob Magao, and I owned a couple of jiu-jitsu schools in Connecticut, Manchester and Hebron Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, also known as Bushido BJJ. And then I'm a retired police officer for 25 years in the Connecticut area, and I run the Officer Survival Series. And today I got my good friend on, Kerry Murakami. He runs Rectitude Training. He's a retired police officer as well from the Chicago area in Illinois. Kerry, how are you today?
Good, Rob. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Everything's doing good and just getting through the winter, just like Chicago is probably, every day is oh man, looking forward to the spring.
The weather just broke, especially yesterday. It was in the low 60s and sunny, and yeah, I can't wait for spring. So yeah, this weather kills me.
Exactly. So why don't we start off? I always like my guests to start off. Just give us a little background about you, like tell the listeners and the viewers on YouTube kind of who you are, kind of how you got started in martial arts and your journey there, and what brought you to law enforcement and stuff like that.
Sure. My name's Kerry Murakami. Everybody calls me Kato. Retired cop. I started in 1993 and retired in 2021, completing a 28-year career all at one agency just in the north suburbs here in Chicago, where I still am technically. My martial arts career, pretty much, my parents really couldn't afford martial arts, even though the church I grew up in had judo. Um, I was in the scouting program, pretty much did that most of my youth. And, we dabbled in a little bit of judo because some of the guys used to train judo. So I used to get thrown on my head a lot as a youth. Um, Probably got at least one concussion doing that. Then went to college, didn't really want to go to college, really wanted to go right in the Marine Corps, but my parents were like, no, we want you to try college. Uh, Took a criminal justice class, and I'm like, I always wanted to be a cop. Let's just do this. So, couple years in college, never finished. Got hired on in the early 90s. Um, as far as the rest of the martial arts stuff, I think it was in I think 90, 89, 90 or something like that. I started Aikido, did that for a little while, really wasn't my thing. They couldn't come up with answers for sucker punches and double legs. And so I was like, yeah, no, I'm going to move on. Uh, Really didn't start my jiu-jitsu career till 2000. Where actually you probably know Adam Miller through the Pedro Sauer Association, but he was
Oh
actually,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
Yep.
he was my first jiu-jitsu coach. He was a purple belt at the time, and a bunch of us cops started training with him. And actually, just the old agency I used to work for, um, the chief is my black belt and brought Adam in like a month ago. So it was really good to see. So I'm sorry I'm all over the place, but yeah, started jiu-jitsu in 2000. Kind of like there was a long off and on period, 9-year white belt type of thing. And finally got my black belt in 2019 with Newbury Training Center. And yeah, I think now in hindsight, in the last handful of years, um, what I do with all the kids that are coming up, starting jujitsu and in law enforcement, I tell them there to me there were two intersections, and everybody's different, but I had two intersections. And um, the first intersection was a personal intersection, and that was like fighting and guns. And then the second was a professional intersection, and that intersection turned out to be team tactics. And so both of which I'm fairly proud of and fairly still teaching right now. And took deep dives in those in, I don't know, the last 20 years, give or take.
Nice. It's funny, our background started off kind of similar. I came from a family where we didn't have a whole lot either, and couldn't afford any martial arts, even though I wanted to train. We did have a judo program though in my school, my elementary school, and it was kind of free. It was after school, and I started in judo as well, which is kind of interesting, and did that for several years as a youth until the program kind of ended. But it's funny how those things kind of evolve, and I was kind of the same way. I came out of high school and like I didn't really, I knew I wanted to be in law enforcement, but I didn't know how to get there, and I ended up going to community college. But and then taking the test, and that was it. But through your background and coming into jiu-jitsu and stuff like that, and you ended up at some point in your career saying, "Hey, I want to use what I know from jiu-jitsu and from the martial arts world and combine it with what I know in law enforcement." And you started to do some kind of training for law enforcement. Whenabouts was that in your career?
Um, I put in for a DT instructor position in I want to say I got it in 95, I think it was. Um, and they sent me to PPCT, and I knew it was flawed from the beginning because to go back to my academy days, pressure points didn't work on me. The academy instructor, this old Chicago copper, brought me up front, and he was doing the pressure points, and none of it worked. And he was like, he clearly got pissed, and he was like, "Yeah, these don't work on everybody." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And I'm like, I if it doesn't work on me, I mean, I don't think I'm anything special, but then okay, then why are we teaching this?" Um, yeah, and so we started teaching that, and we had our ups and downs with that program. Admin would say, "Okay, you're gonna have 4 hours once a year." And then the day, we plan for 4 hours, and then the day before the day of, they'd be like, "Yeah, you maybe got an hour," and you're like, "Okay, so we're gonna whittle basically everything out and teach whatever one or two things." And um, it never really panned out well. And then I think there was a short stint, maybe for like not even a year, where I quit the DT program because uh, I was basically just me, and they weren't giving
Hmm.
me any time. And I'm like,
Yep.
so we're gonna have one lawsuit. They're gonna bring me on the stand, and I'm like, I'm gonna look like an ass because we didn't do any training. And so I was like, yeah, we're done. And then it was right around that 2001 is kind of my guess, where a couple of other guys who were training jiu-jitsu wanted to bring a jiu-jitsu portion or make the program jiu-jitsu related. And they wrote up a short curriculum, and they actually were the ones who got us to train instead of like once a year to every month, because we were going to mimic the range program. We shot every month. So
Hmm.
uh, my buddy, who's now the chief, actually was like, "Hey, come back, take a look at what we're teaching. If you like it, jump back in, like you never left." And so I like looked at it, and I'm like, "Okay, I can get behind this."
Hmm.
There was some like really guard heavy stuff, like a lot of jujitsu guys who want to like get into teaching cops, to be focused kind of on the wrong thing. The guard's important, but like it's not the end all be all.
Hmm.
So got back into the program, started teaching, and then I'm not sure what year. It had to be like in the 2010, 2012 or something like that. We incorporated more of the things that I thought were valuable, like actually, so this is actually later this month will be 12 years I've been teaching team tactics, and that all stemmed from the old PD. So um, you know, team tactics, wrestling, um, you know, knife defense and striking, making it more combative related versus pressure points and stuff like that. So
Exactly.
yeah, like
Yes.
the last 15 years of my career, I was really focused on making it a combative element.
It's funny with the whole, like I love jujitsu. I do it for a living full time at this point, and but at the end of the day, there's things about it that don't translate well to law enforcement. There's elements of it that don't fit, and I agree with you 100%. There are still to this day trainers out there that try to take everything from jujitsu and say it's the answer to everything in law enforcement, and it absolutely is not. But I do think it's got the most answers to the most things when it comes to grappling in general, not just jiu-jitsu. And, wrestling obviously is a huge part of that. I think if I was only going to give somebody something, I'd give them wrestling because I think that's, the positional control, the takedown defense, the clinch work, that to me is probably more useful than searching for triangles off your back all day. It's not necessarily something you're going to do as a cop. I guess it could happen, but not exactly a common situation. But you ended up starting a program or a company, Rectitude Training. Tell me a little bit about that. Like, what made you decide to want to start your own company? And that was what, 2020 or so when you did that?
Yeah, so I'm not a good planner. My plan was actually to retire in 2020. Would have gave me 27 years. My birthday is at the end of March. My anniversary date's at the end of April. So my plan was retire in 2020. But March of 2020, the world kind of flipped upside down. I was like, I'm not retiring with kind of not knowing what's going on in the world. And during that, that right after April, there were three incidences. First was a local incident. Chicago Police Department was involved in a shooting, essentially off the red line, which is a elevated or sub train elevated train, but it goes underground. Anyways, they were on the platform. Two cops couldn't control one guy. They got into a taser battle that went south, and then the dude fled up a escalator where they ended up shooting this guy.
Hmm.
The second was obviously George Floyd. And the third was Richard Brooks, which was the Wendy's DUI case.
Hmm.
Everybody's familiar with that. Like two cops really couldn't control this dude. There was a taser battle. Obviously he stole a taser. They eventually shot him, right? So
A lot of similarities between a lot of these.
yeah, and so you know, I took a deep breath, and the world's upside down. I'm pissed, you know, and I just felt like I had something to offer back to law enforcement, um, especially on the team tactics side. So I figured, you know what, hell with it. So July of 2020, I made up my mind. I'm going to start a business. I just couldn't come up with a business name. So I spent most of July looking, and I just happened to be putting a book away off that I had laying around and putting it on a bookshelf, and it was titled Bushido. And I flipped open like just to reread it and kind of look through the table of contents, and the very first the first concept, or not concept, uh, first
Principle. Yep.
principle is rectitude, right?
Mhm.
Without rectitude, all the other principles are garbage. So rectitude basically is, righteousness, doing the right thing. And I'm like, perfect. This is perfect. So August of 2020, I opened up Rectitude Training. We've been in business just over 5 years, coming up on six. Primarily here in the Chicagoland area, but I've been
Mhm.
slowly venturing out outside of Illinois.
That was interesting because when I saw it, I was like, because obviously, like my school, Bushido Jiu-Jitsu Academy, we have locations in two different places, but it started as a moniker for our club because I started as a club in the '90s for cops. It wasn't a full service martial arts school at the time,
Sure.
and we just looked at it as kind of a samurai code type of thing. Like samurai means to serve. They wore the crest of their village. They protected. They had armor. They had a sidearm in their sword, and if the
Mhm.
and they had to go into battle, right? So we kind of looked at it like that, just from a club perspective. It was about 10 of us, and then we kept that moniker over the years. But I saw that on your name, and I'm like, I wonder if it's got anything to do with the whole Bushido code, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, 100%. Being of Japanese descent, I've always had the awe of the samurai, and so yeah, even the logo partly has part of my family crest involved in it, like the feathers here on the helmet.
Oh, no
Um,
kidding.
yeah, so my family crest is actually here, the crosshawk feathers. Um, And so the way I designed it was to have the feathers in the helmet from my family crest, and then yeah, just kind of evolved that way. So yeah,
That's pretty cool. Now, we met through the Combatives Association with
yeah.
everyone there and Matt Larson's association. And how did you get involved with them?
So I believe Cliff invited me to the Combatives Association Facebook page. I jumped on, really liked what they were doing. I think there were moments where when I first jumped on, I think it was fairly a lot of military, which I didn't quite get some of the lingo.
Hmm.
But overall, I liked what they were doing, and so I just kept following. And obviously we met at the first summit. I thought that was awesome. I was like, I'm not missing out on this. Um, at the end of the first summit, a couple guys, Cliff and Sam Ferguson, asked, "Hey, Kato, you how come you're not teaching?" And I'm like, I'm cool being a student." Um,
Hmm.
and they're like, "Do you want to teach?" And I go, "Yeah, I'm not going to turn it down if they ask." And um, a few weeks later, I got a message from John. We had a conversation. He's like, "I'd like you to teach the next summit." I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." And I don't have a huge social media presence or anything like that. So the funny thing was at the second summit I taught, and John came up to me after. He was like, "Dude," he was like, I was a little nervous. He's like, I've never seen you teach. He's like, obviously I heard of you, but like I've never seen you teach. And so I was a little like, what's he gonna do? And he's like, you're normally pretty jovial, you're pretty laid back. And he's like, but you stepped up on the mats, and he's like, you flipped the switch. And I'm like, yeah, dude, just the lights come on and I just do. So uh, he was like, dude, he was like, you rocked it. I'm like, oh, cool. And I'm like, I, I, I don't know. That was a very first feedback I got from anybody. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. I'm like, I'm glad I was at least relatively on point, and my ADD didn't go too way off the deep end. So yeah, yeah, so then I got invited back to teach last year. So third one, and I'm probably gonna do something a little different for the fourth one if I teach. So yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah, John, for those of you listening and don't know, the Combatives Association, they have a summit, Combative Summit. John Valentine is a guy that pretty much puts it all together. And it's amazing. There's combatives instructors from all over the country and around the world that have specialties in certain areas. They come in for several days every fall. The last couple of years have been in Mississippi, correct? And the first year was in Florida, Redbeard Combatives place. And it's just a great, you meet all kinds of people that are kind of all pulling the same rope in the same direction, on the same path, so to speak. And it was funny because my first experience going down there, I expected a lot more ego riff just because of the different major names coming in, and it couldn't have been further from the truth. Like there was zero. Like everyone was great. They were all welcoming. I got invited through Craig Douglas because I've known Craig for a long time and friends with him. And he's like, hey, why don't you come down to this thing? You should come down. And I ended up going. Luckily, I could go that first year. The problem for me the last couple of years is it's always in the fall, and all of my boys play football, and they have games that whole, and they're like my youngest now is going to be a senior this year. So like I can't miss the last couple of years of high school football to go to this, you know what I mean? But that's coming to an end, unfortunately. But once that does, you'll see me down there more often. But
Awesome. Yeah, it's incredible how John organized it. And then additionally how I think it's just the people in general who are attracted to the combatives arena,
mhm.
like we're all fairly egoless. It's like, hey, um here's an arm drag, and you're showing one variation, and I'm like, oh shit, I never thought of that. Or and here's another guy teaching an arm drag, but he's showing it completely different. And same in jiu-jitsu, like arm bars. Like you bring in 100 different black belts to show arm bars, they're going to show an arm bar, but different variations, right? And different setups, different angles, yada yada. So,
Yeah.
and you know, it made whatever, you know, arm bar or arm drag or whatever may not work for me because I'm the way I'm built or because my legs don't work really well. It is what it is, you know, and maybe I got to find a different way. But I think that's one of the best things about the Combatives Association is it's really egoless.
Absolutely. And you always pick up technique, always pick up some kind of concept or technique. But for me, it's watching people teach and how they explain things and how they work the room and how they interact with students and so like picking up those details of how someone runs a room. That to me is gold to watch some of these guys teach. And then be able to, you know, take some of that and bring it back with you and the techniques are great, but at the end of the day, you know, the first time one caveman tripped another, the martial arts was born. Like, we're not creating anything new necessarily. It's just
No.
slightly different spins on things. And you know, I always look at it like this. You know, we all learn the same language, the same 26 letters of the alphabet, and our signatures all look different, but we use the same letters, right? And it's the same thing with fighting. Fighting is a language, and you know, we might have different variation or different we might put a little different move to something, but it's still the same. As long as the principles aren't violated, it's still the same thing.
Yeah, I
But
mean, I was just AIing for Craig at Edge Weapons Overview. He was here a couple weeks ago, and like, you know, I'm always learning a little something, you know. It's yeah, in the way he's a master in running a room. So he's just a great person to be around.
no, absolutely, 100%. Now, when it comes to training people, and you probably know my take on this, but you know, I've never been quiet about it. I've always had a huge problem with the whole DT instructor process. I've had this huge problem with, hey, let's take the favorite child who put in to go to this class, who doesn't train and doesn't have any background in any of this stuff, but you know, they want it for a resume builder, and they get sent by their boss, who's their buddy, and they go to the class. And meanwhile, there's probably somebody else at the PD that lives this lifestyle on a daily basis, and they didn't get chosen to go for whatever reason. And now the person goes to their 5 day class or 10 day class, whatever, and they come back, and now they're kind of the guru. They're in charge. They're the use of force, the DT expert, because they've got the paper and the T-shirt that show it. What's your opinion of this?
Yes, I 100% agree. And actually, I got talked into possibly, or not possibly. I'm running an instructor certification program with a local PD, and but on the caveat, when we set this up, the commander who initially set this up basically said, I told him, I said, look, I'm not against it, but please understand that if guys can't perform and guys can't teach on demand, they're not going to get a certificate, you know, under me. And so he was like, yeah, I don't blame you. He's a former a D3 wrestler, so he's like, I totally understand. I go, so you know, you might send me. I think they're sending me 8 guys, and if they're not training, you know, the chance of them actually getting a instructor certification in any of my classes is going to be pretty slim. So, and he's well aware of that. He's like, you know, he's like, if, but, you know, and I know a couple of the guys shouldn't have a problem getting a certificate under me, but if they're not training, they're going to be hard pressed. So,
Now, you train for jiu-jitsu. You train at what school? It's TAC team.
yeah, tag team. Yep.
Yeah, Mark
Vivas.
Vives. Yeah, I see him because I still compete IBJJF and everything else, and I always see him in the pen getting ready.
Yep.
We're in a slightly different division, but he's very, very accomplished competitor. But my thing would be this: like when you chose a school for jiu-jitsu, you went to this place or whatever place you started at, and you went in there and you kind of interview the school, right? They interview you, like, what kind of student are you going to be? But you also interview the school. Like, does it have a good facility? Does it have a schedule that meets your needs? Does it have the art you're looking to learn? But at the end of the day, if he would have looked at you and said, I'm a one stripe white belt, I doubt you would have gone there to pay him to teach you jujitsu, right? Right, it
Absolutely.
just you wouldn't have, right? Because you
Right.
have to have the skill, and belt doesn't always represent skill, but in most circumstances, and he's an elite black belt, but in most circumstances, you need to see that proof, right? And I that's my kind of thing. It's like will in law enforcement will take someone that has less training than the one stripe white belt and make them teaching cops. And
Yep.
the cops they're teaching have probably as close to 100% chance of getting into an altercation of anyone you're going to teach, especially
Hmm.
long term over months or years, right? Regardless of agency you work for, it could be a very big agency or a very small agency. At some point, if you stick around long enough, you're going to find yourself in some type of use of force situation. Whereas you can teach martial arts to a room full of people every single day for years, and none of them may ever run into a situation that they have to use it. And that's kind of my problem is that we're basically having the blind lead the blind, and that's why a lot of these people don't like defensive tactics because you go to a class for DT and you're being taught by someone that you recognize pretty quickly doesn't really know what they're doing, or they don't move right, they can't answer questions about little details. Whereas someone that trains all the time, even if they're just a blue belt, they're not going to forget what side control is. They're not going to forget like how to clinch off a punch. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. So locally through the state, we have uh, a lot of antiquated training, still the things from, the 90s. And again, if they were in the 90s, they were teaching it in the 80s, right? So, and they're still teaching. I hope when I'm that much of a dinosaur, I hope to not be teaching antiquated shit. Um, but they're still teaching antiquated shit. The state knows they're teaching antiquated shit, but because of politics, they won't get rid of them. Um, I don't play politics. I'm not well liked with the mobile training unit. I'm not saying maybe not well liked, but I'm very demanding. I have access to pretty much every major mat room here in the Chicagoland area. Um, I would prefer to use a dedicated mat room versus them delivering me mats and then I got to set up all the mats and then clean them, yada yada. And we had a slight miscommunication and possible falling out. And I said, look, this is unacceptable. I've never not wanted to teach for you guys. I've been pushing for more classes, and that's not happening. But again, I'm not going to kiss anybody's ass to teach more classes. I'm just going to move out of state and work around it. So, but yeah, the whole idea of the blind leading the blind, or a virgin teaching sex, you know what I mean? You can't have that. And so just like in jujitsu, I tell all my guys who are training, like, you know, if you receive a belt from whoever your instructor is, like, I wouldn't have promoted the chief to black belt if he didn't deserve it, right? Um,
correct.
and basically, I look at it as my name is associated with this person for the rest of his life if he's training jujitsu. So, if a white belt wants a blue belt, go beat up the blue belts. If a blue belt wants to be a purple belt, go beat up the purple belts. Like there's, like it's pretty easy. Um, you know, and whether you're a competitor or not, like if you're a competitor, man, like, okay, I expect a little more out of you. I want to start seeing some wins, yada yada. Um, but if you're just a hobbyist, you should still be threatening, certain things. Here, I'm pretty messed up, but I still get on the mats, and if you know I let my white belt mount me, like you should be doing some attacks. You shouldn't just be laying there. You should be attacking. Um, if you want to get a blue belt, start attacking like a blue belt. So, I put myself in precarious situations all the time, and sometimes they tap me. But I expect that when I give you my arm. So,
Exactly. Exactly. And I look at it like this. I don't treat everyone equally. I treat them fairly. And what I mean by that is I've got a student, his name's Mersch, Chris. We call him Mersch. His last name is Mersheimer, so we shortened it. Anyway, he's 73, okay? And he's been training since he was 55. And he got his black belt about a year ago. And is he going to compete as a 73-year-old guy against a 20-year-old blue belt? No, he's not. Okay? But do I never promote him because he's not able to beat that blue belt? No, but I guarantee you, if I drop, and I always joke with them, if I bring Chris to the local, assisted living place with all the other 70-year-olds, and he's going to kick all of their asses. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, I treat them as fairly as I can based on the totality of circumstance within their life. How old are they? How fit are they? I mean, fit they can have control over, but if they have other things going on in their lives that could affect it, I'm not going to treat a 19-year-old the same as I will a 50-year-old father of four that works two jobs. I'm going to require more of that younger person to get that
Absolutely.
rank. So there's that part of it too. Now, when it comes to what was I going to say? When it comes to your class that you do a specific class. I always see you do it, fight over the gun. How did that describe that class? The name is obviously compelling. And how did that develop, and what exactly do you cover in that?
So that class, it's two parts. It's 2 days. So day one is weapon retention, in and out of the holster, standing and grounded, and then day two is kind of my content, and it's concepts of disarming bad guys, and that all kind of came about, especially the day two content came about actually from a real incident in 1994. We neighboring town got a call, a woman screaming for help. My buddy and I were working the west end of our town. He stops a dude walking like a peg-legged pirate. Literally, his right leg was stick straight, and he stops him. Dude won't take his hands out of his pockets. He crushes the hand and feels what he thought was a gun. So I'm right around the corner. I race up, screw my gun to this dude's head, and he starts pulling out what he told me he had a gun. So I was like, okay, I'm thinking, you know, either a semi-auto or a revolver, and he pulls out a full-length shotgun, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Needless to say, kid was a gangbanger. He jumped out of the gang, came out to the suburbs, and they were still following him. They wanted to little retaliation. So they didn't
I
want
guess
to.
he didn't think through how difficult that would be to draw under pressure.
Absolutely, yeah. It was. I can only imagine what, like, the expression on my face and how my eyes must have, like, popped out of my head, because the gun just kept coming out of his pocket. I was like, oh, this is not a pistol. This is not a revolver. This is a full-length shotgun. And so that went extremely well, but I always burn in the back of my head, like, okay, what if that went wrong? And like, how could we make this better? So I look at my career and the classes that I teach as essentially, I see a problem in law enforcement, and then this is my take on an answer. So that class, the weapon retentions, I mean, weapon retention, I think, understanding, the holster does a portion of it. You do the rest. Um, that's, fairly, everybody teaches weapon retention. So, like, I don't think I teach anything, um, extraordinary. I think on the weapon retention side, the only thing I think I separate myself is, I am very fortunate. I have some local sponsors who donated a bunch of gear, a bunch of money for gear, and so all my students, when I travel, you get a duty belt, inner outer duty belt, you get a holster, you get a training gun, so you don't have to sacrifice your gear or even travel with gear. You just show up. I provide everything for you. And I
That's
didn't,
amazing, actually.
yeah, this local, he's a heating and air guy. He runs a blue line, heating in air, and he's pro law enforcement, and he really liked what I was doing, and he wanted to help out. And so he donated a fairly large sum of money for training equipment. And so all my students, we can break holsters and who cares? Like I got more.
It's one thing I always tell our students, like, listen, if you're gonna do this kind of training all the time and be doing combative training on a routine basis, you don't want to use the gear you trust in the street. You can get the same you should have the same setup so that you're used to where everything is. But if you keep chipping away at it in training and weakening the system over time, and then that one day you need it to work, and that's the day that it fails, like you really shouldn't be beating up your own gear and equipment. You should be having a second set that you can use in training that's identical, that you can test and see what his limits are. But I don't believe in beating up your own stuff.
Yeah, I've been to plenty of classes where, you see the holster just like, getting, tore away at like 30 to 45 degrees and you hear a slight little crack and you're like, oh, that's not
Oh
good. I'm like, hey, dude, like, I hope that's a training, rig. And he's like, no, this is my duty rig. And I'm like, you, you probably really should have really thought about that. Like, because you're not going to stop at the local Walmart and pick up a level 3 holster for your duty gun. It's not going to happen. So,
no,
uh,
no. It's funny.
yeah,
One of my favorite T-shirts is the one you sent me with your company, and on the back, I think it says, "Everyone wants to be a gunfighter until it's time to fight over the gun."
yeah, again, that just the 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 actual class. So when I proposed the class, even my girlfriend, she was like, "Fight 2-4 over the gun." She's like, "I don't know." She's like, "That's too long." She's like, "I don't understand." And I go, "But it is what it is. We are fighting two. We are fighting four. We are fighting over said gun. Whether it's his gun, whether it's my gun." Um, you
Mhm.
know, and so she was like, "Huh?" And I'm like, and a lot of people ask me, they're like, I don't understand what the class is. And I'm like, it's exactly what it is. Fight 2-4 over the gun. Yeah, and on the flip side, like everybody loves shooting. Well, not everybody, but most people would much rather go shoot than they go do DT, right? So,
No, yeah,
so that's hence the kind of that I think the original quote I stole was everybody has a plan till they get punched in the face.
yeah.
Uh,
Mike Tyson. Yeah.
so I kind of took a spin off of that. So
No, it's brilliant, actually. I always thought it was a great. As soon as I saw it, I'm like, "Oh, that's amazing." And guys will always comment on it too when I'm wearing it at the school and stuff like that. They're like, "Oh, where'd you get that shirt?" And I'm like, "Well, let me tell you." And it's pretty cool. Now, who do you um who do you look towards in the combatives world as people that you go take classes from, or you follow on Instagram, or you say, hey, they're doing good training? Who's some people that some of our listeners or observers on YouTube here could look towards as far as other people you think are doing it right?
well, you first, right? I
Oh,
think
thanks.
the Office Bible Series is an excellent program. I haven't taken it, but like what I see and from the people I hear from, it's an excellent program, and you probably should go nationwide. Just saying. But I think it's of the law enforcement programs, the top of the food chain there. On the combatives, and I push a lot of the combatives guys, but you know, uh, obviously Craig Douglas, ShivWorks, Cliff Byerly, Hill Country Combatives. He might be retiring, but I hope not. I learned a lot from Cliff. You got Ben Aubin from Red Beard Combatives. Obviously, we mentioned John Valentine. You got Cole Miller. There's just so many guys who are so
Sam Ferguson's another one.
erg, like
Yeah,
he's kind of like a little brother to me, big little brother to me.
yeah, he's a big little brother.
He's easy to pick on, but no, he's a great guy, and he's actually a Central Illinois guy, and he got his black belt under Carlson Jr. So he's very much a top pressure game, and yeah, it's just pretty much everybody associated with the Combatives Association and the summit. I'm pushing because I think they're doing, top of the food chain stuff. And, we all generally know it works. But these guys are pushing the boundaries, pushing the limits, and really adding in their own little answers to, lifelong problems.
No, I agree. Yeah, it's one of those things where I also think they still love jujitsu, but they haven't fallen so much in love with it they're blinded by it. They still question it intensely, and they're like, all right, this works on the mat, but it's different here, and that's what I think I like about. I follow a lot of different organizations out there, and they all have benefits, but I do believe the Combatives Association is honest with that. Like
Yeah,
they don't just blindly follow because it's a jiu-jitsu thing.
I think Craig calls it, martial agnostic, like um,
Hmm.
you know, I don't care where it comes from, as if it works, that's what I want to add. So and I think pretty much everybody looks at that in that manner. So and you can't say that with some of the other, organizations, like uh some people are extremely knife heavy and everything answers the knife, right? It's almost like the exact same thing with a gun, right? Like you got your firearms guys, and the answer is I just shoot the guy, and I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna stay far, far away from you. I'm not going to your call because I don't want to be indicted, Um, and we all know that's bullshit because, you know, again, I've worked with plenty of the I just shoot you guys, and you haven't shot anybody. In fact, you keep saying it, but I've never been on a call where you pulled your gun out. So, you know,
Yeah.
and
Another problem I always had with all I mean, I love I think the KCC guys do a great job with edge weapons. I think obviously Craig's class with overview of edge weapons is fantastic. But I know what you're saying about the whole edge weapons community, and one thing I never understood is like with jiu-jitsu or MMA or wrestling, we can show a lot of experience throughout of the people that teach this of utilizing this stuff for real, taking people down, controlling them, cuffing them. There's not a lot of people been in knife fights live to tell the tale, to be able to. It's a lot of it is theory. There's not a whole lot of people out there with 30, 40 knife fights under their belt. I don't know of any that can there. So a lot of it is theory. It's theory versus, the team tactics. You've probably done that a bunch of times, clinching off a punch and taking someone into the cruiser and down to the ground and cuffing him. People have done that multiple times. Some of the weapon stuff may or may not work. We don't really know until, the few people that have unfortunately found themselves in those positions get to test it.
yeah, yeah. And I think, all the more reason just to train, like, you know, uh, we had last year we had Jerry Wetzel from Red Zone Threat Man
Hmm.
up, and I'm hoping to bring him back. But you look at some of the testing he did, and it's funny because like when this was before even KCC was around, I went to a bunch of different knife classes and got my ass handed to me, and I brought it back to my PD, and a couple of my guys were like, "Yeah, I don't know if that stuff's gonna work, yada yada," and they were like, they wanted to use Kimura, and I'm like, bro, like that's not the answer. I'm just telling you. And they were like insistent. And I just told them and I'm not normally like this, but I just told them, I go, okay, everybody go get suits. I go, lock that door. And I go, ain't nobody leaving here with a bullshit injury. And they were like, oh. And I go, yeah, we're gonna test this. And they were like, yeah, never mind. I'm like,
Yeah. Then
I
they
did
don't
all
want to
that
know all
for
of a
you.
sudden.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
like,
A friend,
I
a
did.
friend of mine I worked with for many years on our team together, Chris Chappell. He was a former Ranger, and when he would have arguments with people with like that kind of thing that they thought something was going to work, and he would say, "Go ahead and do that. Just let me know ahead of time. Where do you want to be buried, and what do you want your headstone to read?" Because that's a terrible idea. You just don't know it yet. You know.
Yeah. Some, if you want to go through the pain and suffering that I just went through, by all means, we can suit up and we'll just kick each other's ass and we'll figure out what works and what doesn't. And,
Exactly.
you know, I, I also think if you kind of, I'm not saying this is a generational thing, but if you kind of like look at some of the older guys, who put in all the work and all the pressure. I think we're just wired slightly different, and we're willing to take the abuse and for the greater good. And
A lot of Generation X people, though,
yeah,
well,
so
different times.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I've gotten more share of my concussions early in life than I did later in life, but I still got a couple.
Now, what classes do you have coming up? You have anything coming up in the next few months? And
So I law enforcement training here in Illinois is tough. Um, I mentioned some of the stuff with the state, and I'm fairly kind of handcuffed. So I opted late last year or middle of last year to kind of start delving into the open enrollment market. So that Fight 2-4 of the gun class, I'm going to take that on the road also
Mhm.
and teach it to civilians. It's obviously going to be modified. Um, but so I have on the civilian side, I have Colorado in April. I think June I'm going to New Mexico, and then September I'm doing a class in Ohio. So, um, and then I got a couple other ones that we're talking, but nothing on the books yet. And then for law enforcement, I'm going to Appleton to teach my team tactics, Appleton, Wisconsin, to teach my team
Mhm.
tactics later this month. And then
Oh, do you
next,
know Bill up there?
yep, that's where we're
Yeah,
going. Yeah,
yeah, Bill's awesome. Good
yeah,
people.
yeah, really good dude. Um, he's brought me up there a couple times to teach the team tactics and my gun class.
Hmm.
So, and then March, I'm going to teach at Ileta. And then right after Ileta, I'm driving down to Texas and I'm going to be teaching my gun class at Grapevine PD.
Nice, nice. Bless you because that's a hard that's some people think, oh, that'd be so awesome to just drive around and go all over the place and teach. It's hard, man. It's like I you mentioned a few minutes ago I should take my program nationally. I will occasionally teach outside of Connecticut, but I did it for years and years, and it burnt me out. I got to the point where this is a long time ago. This is, 2006, 7, 8, 9, whatever, and I just got burnt out from it. And I just felt like I could cause more change in my home area, you know, on a weekly basis than I can setting small fires around the place. But I think it's different now. The social media vibe is different. People are seeing the classes and going to them, and I think it's easier to stay in touch with the instructors and stuff. But I got burnt out from doing it. But it's a lot when you go. Some of these guys, like look at some of these companies. These people will be on the road 40 weeks a year.
Yeah, that's not what I'm looking to do. I'm just looking to expand my business just enough,
Yep.
a little bit every year. So my goal this year was to do 4 to 6 classes out of state. And
Yeah. See, that's doable.
yeah, and I'm on track to do that. And so
And
uh
we do have to get you up here. We talked about it last year, and then just things didn't work out right, and then I got hurt. Obviously, I snapped my ACL and recovering from that. But at some point, we want to get you up here and do that. Do a class. I think it would be great. I think you'd get a lot of reception up here. We tons of cops train up here. I think it would be good.
you have a really good following up there, and I think um that is an awesome. So not to bounce all over the place, but like I believe I heard you talk on another podcast about how you made the change in the state and I would love to do that in Illinois, but man, the politics here is crazy. And I can't get enough guys on board who have the same mentality. Like here, I think it was your podcast that it was the impetus for this. But I sent out a text to like, I don't even know, probably 50 to 100 different cops. And I was like, hey, look, this is what I'm like looking to do, yada, yada. Combination of your podcast, and you've heard of Calfia. They're
Oh yeah, yeah, yep,
California
yep, exactly.
instructor, something like that.
Yeah, I
Uh,
forget what it stands for, but yeah.
but I try to get a little offshoot, kind of like, just even to just okay, so let's just meet every 3, 4 months or something. And I didn't get responses from most of the people who I sent the text messages to, and a few others who responded basically were like, "Nah, not interested." And I'm like, the only way we're going to get change is if we can kind of like come together. And but the jiu-jitsu guys were like, "Oh, it's all jiu-jitsu. We don't want to teach combatives. It's not, our thing." And I'm like, okay, then just teach jujitsu. You know what I mean? Like as long
Yep.
as you don't as long as you don't make that crossover and claim you're a combatives guy, then we're good. You know what I mean? Like, but anyways, in Illinois, it's just there's I can't get the interest. So I'm like, yeah, it's okay. More time for myself. So
Exactly. There you go. And I tell you what, it was a long, long battle to get that, done. And I think for us, Craig will always say it was kind of like the perfect storm because, first of all, Connecticut's a small state, third smallest one besides Rhode Island and Delaware. So I'm able to affect things better than I could a big place like California, for example, because it's just so vast. Beyond that, we were lucky because a lot of the old guard was starting to retire and the new guard coming in had kind of grown up with jiu-jitsu and MMA, and they knew the value of it.
yeah.
And New England's a fight community, always has been. A lot of. I mean, we're the home of Naga, right? We're the home of reality fighting. We're the home of, Dana White was born in Manchester, Connecticut. So I mean, we have that. Boxing is huge in New England and stuff. So we had kind of a lot of fight fans and stuff. And then, I've owned jiu-jitsu schools since the 90s. And I think that in conjunction with the SWA challenge and the things that we developed through that, we proved it to a lot of people. But it was 20 years in the making. What people see now, that started 25 years ago.
Oh yeah.
It's not easy to do. But anyway, I really thank you for your time. I know you got to get going. Where can people find you if they want to follow you?
Social media, it's Rectitude Training LLC. If you want to hit me up, shoot me an email, rectitudetraining@gmail.com.
Awesome. Last question for you. Kind of a throw out there is if you could change one thing nationally when it comes to police training, that you had a pipeline right to the President of the United States, and you could change one thing nationally, what would you change? Whatever you say, they have to do. Every department.
I would start with team tactics. That's what I would start with. I mean, so we've all seen like the footage of ICE lately, right? And
Yep.
they were here in Chicago, and some of the arrests I saw were heinous. And if the 2 or 3 cops would have worked together versus working separate, it wouldn't have turned into such a gaggle fest. And so I would say nationally, got to start with team tactics. And my opinion is basically once people see the team tactics working, they are more apt to listen to you in the mat room and take what you have to offer a little more seriously versus, you know, 2 officers using solo techniques and it's not working. It's not working because your partner's not helping you and he's resisting. He's helping the bad guy to resist even more. So I would start with team tactics.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it's one of those things that even though I believe in training consistently over time, like we've talked about many times, I do think that team tactics is something that can be taught relatively quickly. I think you could take imagine every officer in the United States had a full 8-hour day of team tactics with the people they're going to work with, and everybody knew each other's job. I think it would make a massive, massive difference.
Yeah, like I said, my old agency is pretty small. I wouldn't say we get into a ton of use of force, but the training sergeant did a re he we they were already accredited, but they re-accredited or
Yep,
whatever,
yep.
and they took a 4-year study, and basically we're the only police department, I guess, in this accreditation that in the last 4 years have not used uh, any other implement other than hands-on, meaning no taser, no OC, no baton, no blunt force encouragement. Like literally, we just take people down, you get them in handcuffs, and the discussion. So I don't remember the stats off the top of my head, but
That's pretty interesting. I'd love to read that sometime. And it's funny because all those tools were designed many years ago so that police could keep distance from their opponent. And now we're almost going back to forget the distance. Let's go hands on and control these people. And the real truth is it's a combination of both depending on the circumstances.
absolutely. Like when the tasers came out, or they were considering using them or purchasing them for our department. I was one of the first guys like, yeah, let's do it. I think it's a great distant tool that may or may not work. Um, but it's not a body contact tool. And I think it's just trained incorrectly, it's deployed incorrectly. And I can't speak to the Taser 10 because I'm retired and you know
Mhm.
the few people who have it say it is the best taser out there now. So
Yeah, I've seen it demoed. It's pretty legit. Again, they have to do more studies with it to see how it goes. But I mean, what I saw in person, my only thing was it kind of sounds like a gun going off, like in person. Like it's pretty loud, and
yeah,
depending on the environment, the way it can echo and stuff.
sure.
Uh, yeah, it can be kind of confusing to others in the area.
I believe it's considered a firearm, so
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I, I don't know. So I think again, it's just another tool, right? Like I would much rather build a master carpenter and who knows when and when not to use their tools, and when to switch you know, from one screwdriver to another, or
exactly.
you know,
It's funny. You go like to the jiu-jitsu guys that aren't cops, and they'll see a video and they'll be like, "Oh, why didn't they do X, Y, or Z? And why did they have to use their taser? Or why did they spray the guy?" And I'm like, they could have just grabbed. I'm like, well, listen. First of all, the people you're rolling with in class probably haven't shit themselves, pissed themselves. They probably took showers. The last 6 months. And they don't have sores all over their body. Like they don't realize that it's very different dealing with someone. Not every person you deal with in the street is like that, but that's happens. Like you go to grab somebody, I don't want to touch this guy. Like this is
yeah.
not a
I mean,
good.
in the 90s, we had full blown AIDS patients
Yeah.
who open sores, and you're like, here I remember cuffing this one dude. We had this one dude who constantly would arrest, and we didn't have any of the biohazard cleaning materials that you do now. And I remember like, how the hell am I going to clean these cuffs? I remember like
Oh yeah.
pouring a whole thing of alcohol, dumping it in alcohol, and then taking it out of the alcohol, putting it in bleach, and going back and forth. And then, yeah, it was crazy. So,
Yeah. Very, very different. Well, anyway, thank you very much. Hopefully I'll get
hey,
to catch up with you this year and anything you need from me, just let me know. And I appreciate coming on.
awesome. It was a great. Thank you for inviting me, and it was great to be on.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, and there's 3 members off with the driver and all. They're just put in mode, taking them into custody here.